Hello, and welcome to another edition of the program Meet Professionals with me, KEBE. Well, Meet Professionals is a platform where I engage high-level conversations with professionals, academics, researchers, entrepreneurs, policymakers, change management experts, and many more. Well, for today's edition, we're joined by Mr. Alfred Akibo Betts. He's a chartered accountant and also a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants of the United Kingdom and also the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sierra Leone. He also doubles as a tax expert. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much, Ivy.
How have you been?
I'm doing great. It's a Sunday, but I'm fine. Everything's good.
Okay, good. So let's dive into it. Let's start with your professional journey. Well, take us through your background to where you are now as a tax expert and also an accountant. Yeah,
well, I'm a chartered accountant, as you just said. I became a chartered accountant. That must have been maybe mid-2000s, 2006 or 2007. And I'm a fellow of the Chartered the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Sierra Leone, but also the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants in the UK.
Wow.
My dream of becoming an accountant actually started when I was in Form 3. The first time I actually did accounting. And interestingly, I think the first time I did accounting, I had 100% in class. So I was obviously excited that I'm going to be an accountant. Yeah. So, because I guess when I was much younger, as a kid, you want to be a pilot, you want to be all these fancy things. But to be honest with you, I didn't think about it as a career. I just passed a test. So I was obviously happy. I was able to balance the accounts, as they usually say. And obviously, I went to a business stream in school, O levels, A levels, and I went to Fabi College. I did my honors degree in accounting and finance. I got a relatively okay result, I'll say. Then obviously I finished. As soon as I finished, I did my ACCA immediately. I finished it in 2 years, so I actually dedicated all my time just finishing college. It was crazy, but it was okay. Thank God. So I finished that. So around that time, obviously became a chartered accountant, and I worked all throughout that time, because before you become a member of the Association of Chartered Accountants, you need to have some years of experience. So I was an affiliate first, but I've always loved accounting from that time on. But generally speaking, it's so interesting that I usually tell people, even let's say 15, 16 years after, that I'm a chartered accountant, but I'm more in the tax side, the finance tax side.
Taxation.
And I will say that once you're a chartered accountant, I think that's a good thing. You actually can do diverse things. So that's the main thing I actually specialize in doing tax. So I know the accounting side, but I mainly specialize in tax. So that's generally my journey.
Okay, good. I think that's very much impressive, right? From you had the passion right from the day you got 100% in accounting. Wow. Okay, so
that was the easy in accounting.
Okay, that was the easy accounting. No problem. So now, as a professional and a family man, so one may want to ask, how do you balance that?
It's quite interesting. What do I say? I think you have to get your priorities and how you balance the different balls in your life. And I think obviously family is the most important. My wife, my kids, especially obviously giving time to your kids, because you're obviously trying to bring them up to ensure that you create some values in them in terms of hard work and things like that. So obviously that's the biggest priority. But at the end of the day, you have to understand that you need to do something, so obviously you can take care of them, obviously when it comes to finances and things like that. So you obviously try to balance it, and balance it means that you need to find how you block your time. When you're obviously in the office, it's concentrating on your work, but that doesn't mean that, for example,
you don't have time with the family.
Exactly. So my 5-year-old son will tell me sometimes that I need to go pick him at school, so I'll leave the office maybe around 2 sometimes, not all the time, and go pick him from school, drop him at the house and come back. And it also means that when I'm home, he's over my head. Maybe my daughter, my 11-year-old daughter, wants her time. I have to give her time. My wife will demand that time in terms of watching movies and things like that. But what I've noticed is that when you're also a working father, working professional, generally speaking, and your children see that in you, they also will grow up basically like that. So they actually see the example. So they see their mother working, they see me working. So even sometimes when I'm in the study, my son will say, well, Dada is working, when he sees a computer, or sometimes he will also go in there.
Right.
I have some Zoom calls where he's actually on my back, and sometimes he will also try to fit it on the computer. But I think you need to have that balance, because you don't, it's obvious you shouldn't go extreme in terms of saying you always want to be very, very professional, or I think we live in a more modern age where the children and obviously the family, they need their time. So I think that is very, very important, because it also keeps you sane. It means that because if you think about your deadlines, you know what I mean, there's sometimes you just say, let me just have fun. For example, yesterday I do have many things, but yesterday we had a movie night, you know what I mean, watching a movie in my daughter's room. So it was like, okay, let me just put this computer down and just
spend time with family.
Because I think that's most important.
So this draws me to the question, what are your basic principles of life as a human being?
I think the first thing, in terms of my parents, my mother and my father, instilled in me a lot of, I think, integrity. I think that's a big thing. They were very, very big on that, and being very honest. We also tell our kids in terms of saying, even if you've done something wrong, just say it, you know what I mean, let's deal with it, because we're able to discuss it. But also very hard work. I think it means that I am a very, very hard worker. I think I also got that from my parents, my mom and my dad. And it means that also that translates into perseverance, meaning that when you're down, because I always believe, generally speaking, I think I saw that with people around me and also my parents, that when you actually have some issues or problems in life, then that's the time you should actually prove to yourself that that's like a learning curve for you, so you can actually just move past that and excel in life. So I think, generally speaking, when you talk about integrity, perseverance, honesty and all that, I think those are the key things in life, and that's what actually guides me. And obviously family. I think family is the biggest.
I think that's very much impressive. Integrity, perseverance, and all the rest. So let's move away from that a little, and let's talk about what is it about the Betts farm?
Oh, well, the Betts farm, I worked professionally for 16 years in the public service, and during that time, obviously, build skills mainly in taxation, working also in Sierra Leone, also internationally. So I just thought that, look, there's no way I can, if I want to go to the private sector, because it's always been my desire to go to the private sector. Interestingly speaking, I opened my first business when I was actually just finishing college. So we had a building materials store just before I finished college. So I actually took over it when I finished college, and I've always been dabbling in business here and there, doing different things, investing with friends or other ventures. But what I did was, as soon as I was leaving my job, I said, look, let me just do something that will also create value in this space, because at the end of the day, you also trying to contribute to your country, not only the public sector, but also in the private sector. So the Betts farm is a tax accounting farm, but we also do business and investment advisory and also regulatory advisory work. We obviously have clients in different sectors, providing tax advice for them, doing their books in terms of accounting. It's a small young team that is growing, but we're very proud that, for example, recently we actually featured in the ACCA magazine, the worldwide magazine, which I think we're very proud of. We're maybe a year and a half or so old, but generally speaking, when I actually talk about bringing value to that space, it means that we're trying to do things different from the people we actually met in that space. So one of the big things, the biggest things for us actually is actually customer service, meaning that we're moments call away or moments email away, because we believe that we need to help, for example, let's say the clients we have in tax advice, in ensuring that they obviously meet their regulations, their obligations, but also helping them just navigate the space in terms of accounting, because taxation.
Because the tax landscape in Sierra Leone, it's a very, very vast space, and there are not too many experienced players there that can deliver value. And I think the Betts farm is actually doing well in that space. Now let us go to a very broader perspective about the tax landscape in Sierra Leone. How do people or Sierra Leoneans see taxation in Sierra Leone, including businesses?
Well, Taxation in Sierra Leone has been there for maybe the 40s, 50s and things like that, but things really started to pick up, let's say, around 2003 when the National Revenue Authority was formed, and the key reason why that organization was formed is because the government actually just wanted to consolidate tax revenue in the country in terms of bringing income tax administration and also customs administration under one. And what it meant is that from that time on, things have actually been progressing, and it means that the tax base has expanded a little bit more than it was at that time. But I think there's a long way to go in actually tax administration in Sierra Leone compared to maybe other countries. Generally speaking, businesses don't generally, to be very honest with you, many people don't like paying taxes. That's just a general thing. When I was working at in the public service, we usually say, even if they give you your money and you have to go pay the tax, and next door maybe you'll not pay all the taxes. But I think more and more the clients we deal with, and generally when you talk to businesses, yes, they don't always like paying taxes, but on the other hand, they know that they have to comply.
It's obligatory.
Yes, it's obligatory and it's by law. So it's not about whether you want to pay or not to pay, but I think as responsible citizens, people do pay. I think one key thing for clients and also generally for businesses in Sierra Leone, they obviously don't want to pay more than what they should pay. So it means that they demand more of our services, and actually just looking at where obviously they don't have to pay, they shouldn't be paying. But on the other hand, generally speaking, when it comes to the Revenue Authority side, they haven't reached the optimum in terms of what they want, in terms of the resources they have in tax administration. Not all businesses do pay taxes. Obviously, they don't have enough resources to, let's say, cover all the taxes. So what you actually see is that you see a big balance towards people that are more visible. And so I think one of the key advances we're seeing in other countries is that maybe and also the tax authority in Sierra Leone is doing that. It's actually investing more in data analytics, so it means that they're able to get more information on you that they can
keep track of those who've paid,
and also even now they're actually thinking of implementing an integrated tax administration system, which will be more online. So it means that will reduce the cost for the taxpayer, hopefully, because it means that Sierra Leone is one of the few countries in the world where we still have a manual system where you have to actually fill in the return, take it to the bank and things like that. So all of these things, I guess, in the future will be able to improve the tax system. But I think what is generally key for also local businesses in Sierra Leone is that most of the, let's say, general tax incentives that have been given or try to encourage businesses have been mainly skewed to, let's say, foreign investors. So I think more local businesses in Sierra Leone are calling, generally speaking, now for some of these advantages to also be given to local businesses. And even this year, the Finance Act 2021 actually gave some of it. So for example, if you're a new business that was formed from 1st of January this year till 3 years time, you don't pay tax for a year and things like that. So that will obviously encourage more people to come and do business, you know what I mean, especially
so you want to say that all what you've explained are some of the problems why people or businesses don't comply with taxes, because we all know how important tax management is for national development as well as growth. So one may want to ask, why is it difficult for authority dedicated towards that still finds it difficult to be able to get what the country needs from taxation? Because other countries are moving or growing because of that, just their tax system. But again, the ones administering it, the ones enforcing the laws, are they actually affecting the management system of taxation in Sierra Leone?
Well, what I would say, to be very honest, is that I obviously know I'm on the private sector side, but I do see that there are some improvements over time. One of the key things, measurements of tax performance for every country, is the GDP to tax revenue, and the GDP ratio has actually grown in the past few years, so it means that things are much better. I think also professionally, when you look at the people you deal with in the tax authority, they're becoming more professional than how it was maybe 10, 15 years ago. There's obviously a long way to go. There are challenges in terms terms of, let's say, finances, actually just the whole country and also the experience and things like that. So I think it's still a balance. It's still a 50-50 balance. I wouldn't say they're doing bad. I wouldn't say they're doing extremely well, but I think they're relatively doing well. And I think, but businesses obviously want more, you know what I mean, in terms of how they can obviously, when you look at maybe the taxes that are levied on
because I'm actually going to that part now, because businesses always do say that taxes levied are too high and it's affecting growth, because a lot of studies also have been done on SMEs in Sierra Leone, and a lot of them, the primary concern they have is that the taxes levied are too high. And trust me, when the taxes are too high, it begs the question that one may want to find another route to get the taxes paid. And probably that's what a lot of businesses now focus on, because if they do see that the taxes are high, they always find ways of circumventing the system. So as a tax expert and someone who has been in that space, so what ways do you think that it can be improved to make sure that people comply and also have a 50-50 way? Because businesses also must pay their taxes, and they don't want to pay it at their own expense because they have their books to cover.
I think it's actually two things. The first thing I would say is engagement. So one of the things that, so there's a DFID project called Invest Salon, and last year what they actually did was to bring together the public sector and private sector doing a public-private dialogue in terms of tax policy. And I'll go to the second part, which is actually tax policy, but let's talk about the engagement side. So the engagement side, once the public sector and private sector players are able to speak to each other, you actually see advancement in actually people listening to each other. Because what you actually have had for a very long time is that you've had situations where when public sector players are actually developing tax policy, what they do is actually they close themselves in the room, and basically they don't have the thinking of obviously the private sector. And obviously the private sector is out there screaming that, you know what I mean, we want things to change. So I think that's a big thing. And last year, because of that, about 13 or so things that the private sector wanted went into the Finance Act. So you can see actually some progress.
There's some engagement.
Because the interesting thing is that if you're not in the private sector, actually in the industry, you don't understand how your tax policy will impact a business. You know what I mean? You don't have that thinking, because your thinking is actually just to increase tax and things like that. So I think that's one thing. I think secondly also, one thing we haven't been doing in Sierra Leone, which I think we really need to do, and that's the reason why I would not just say a tax rate is high or a tax policy is not good without actually having the empirical data to actually support it. So one of the big things I think in tax policy in Sierra Leone that should be introduced a lot in terms of, let's say, if they want to increase a tax rate, let's say from 10 to 15, or if they want to reduce the tax rates, let's say if you want to reduce the GST rates, goods and services tax rate from 15% to 10%. What data supports that? You know what I mean? Because it's not only the tax revenue, but how is it going to impact the economy as a whole? Because, for example, if they reduce a tax rate, it means that they're going to give me more money to spend. Will I be spending that money on things that will actually boost the economy? Or not? So the interesting thing is that doing engagement and actually doing proper analysis of each and every tax policy measure is actually very, very key for everybody to make decisions. Because what has actually happened over a period of time is that most tax decisions, most tax policy decisions haven't actually been made using empirical data. So I think that's where we need to come together in terms of the public sector and private sector actually working together to actually do this.
So for me, I think from what you just said, I think there should be more robust research is conducted to have a lot of data, so the data speaks for itself. So decisions can be based on data. Because one thing that's important is that the tax policies in itself attracts foreign direct investment. So for Sierra Leone to grow again, it's also important that we have policies that are attractive to foreign direct investment. So that is obviously, so if we, obviously I'm not going to complicate it, let me just say a few things. There's something they usually call tax competition between countries. What tax competition does, competition has actually done
for a long period of time, it has meant that when countries want to attract foreign direct investment, they just try to go to this bottomless pit and actually giving tax incentives.
Right.
And research has obviously shown, and data has actually shown, that when people are making their decisions to make an investment, they don't necessarily make a decision mainly on the tax system in a country. They look at the many things in terms of the labor laws, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of rule of law, and things like that. So it means that it's a holistic approach in actually attracting foreign direct investment in the country. And that's the reason why even some of the people from the private sector, local businesses or indigenous businesses, are saying that, look, let's first of all look inward before
instead of looking outward.
But generally speaking, even when we talk about even the tax incentives, it means that if you want to give a tax incentive, do some research. Don't just give out.
It has to be factual.
Things like sweets. You know what I mean? So I think generally, as I've said, we are way better than we were, let's say 10 years, 15 years ago, but there's still a long way to go in terms of how we're progressing, and as a country in terms of taxation.
Okay, let me just hold you there, Mr. Alfred Akibo Betts. He's the CEO and founder for the Betts Farm. Of course, he's an entrepreneur and also a tax expert. Hello and welcome again, viewers. We have here with us Mr. Alfred Akibo Betts, an entrepreneur, a tax expert, and also an accountant. We've been discussing about the general tax landscape in Sierra Leone. Welcome again, sir.
Thank you very much.
So we've been discussing about the dynamics in the tax landscape in Sierra Leone, and of course, it has been very much insightful. I read an article on the internet why businesses evade taxes, and one of the things I learned was a lot of informal sectors. Corruption is one part of it. So what's your own take on that?
We do have a really big informal sector in Sierra Leone, and obviously generally in sub-Saharan Africa, and that means that it makes it really difficult for the tax authorities in Sierra Leone and also all around Africa to actually collect taxes, because when people are informal, it means that they don't have basically an office that you can actually just go to. They're usually people that will not keep books, so it's difficult for you to be able to know. What we do have in Sierra Leone, actually capturing revenue from some of these smaller businesses, although some can actually be even bigger, but there's a small and micro taxpayer regime that actually has even been revised this year. It had a multiple rates, but this year is actually just a rate of 3% of turnover. It's very difficult most of the time to actually know what the turnover of these businesses are, because obviously most of them don't keep actually proper books of accounts, so they just make some basically general estimates and you call it a day. They're not even required to have an account that is certified by a chartered accountant, by the Institute of Chartered Accountants in Sierra Leone. So that's obviously a big challenge that we have, but it means that what you also see is that it's so interesting. I remember when the COVID-19 started, and some countries, I think I was on an online conference one time, and people were saying that I think it's important even for people in the informal sector to start being formal, because what you see is that there's always a challenge for government to target them even when they want to give them help. So it means that if you can't identify people, I think that's one of the reasons why we're thinking of, Sierra Leone was one of the countries that is thinking of maybe bringing blockchain technology when it comes to ID cards, because it's necessary that when it's important for you to be able to identify people, so you're able to know people, their circumstances. So for example, if you want to do a cash transfer, it's easy for you to give them. But obviously that's a big issue. The wider, and also the other interesting thing why it's always difficult to increase your tax base when you have a lot of informal businesses is the fact that you have little resources to spend on. So what you naturally do is to go after the businesses that you think are formal, you know what I mean? Because you know that they're highly likely. And I think it becomes even more complicated. Moving it from the informal sector to a more informal sector, it also becomes more complicated when it becomes more digitized. So what you have all around the world is that, I think it started to pick up in Sierra Leone more, is that you have a lot of businesses that are digitized. So a lot of, let's say we even say the gig economy, we have a lot of young entrepreneurs now. They basically don't need an office, they just have their computer, working online and things like that. How you're able to target them, track them, so it becomes more complicated. So it means that what generally tax authorities, tax administrations around the world should do is obviously to invest in their resources, and not only their human resources but also their systems, so they're able to capture it. But that is obviously generally a challenge.
Okay, so because that poses a serious threat even in other parts of the world. And do you think even digitizing the economy in terms of payment, in terms of registration, do you think it could solve some of those challenges that we have?
I do believe that, because earlier in the interview you remember I was mentioning that data analytics is a big thing in tax administration. When businesses are more digitized, and let's say people are, Sierra Leone, one of the key challenges we have in Sierra Leone now, the banking infrastructure doesn't accept, let's say, debit cards and credit cards to make payments. So, but what you see in other countries, so there's this, I've forgotten the exact name, but it was something, it's actually like a restaurant app. I can't remember if it's Eat Smart or something, Take Eat, or anyway, something like that in the UK. So what the tax authority, the HMRC in the UK is doing is that they go to these platforms, let's call them a platform, let's say the Ubers of this world and things like that. They basically just go and take the data from this this platform where restaurants actually make their orders through, or let's say we make our orders through, us the customers. So if you want to make an order, let's say if you want to buy from, let's say, McDonald's or Starbucks, you basically just go through that app and purchase. So what it means is that all the data for these businesses actually are stored on this platform. So the tax authorities just go and take that and basically just look at the revenues there and tax these businesses. So when businesses become more digitized, it means that the data is there that the governments can actually capture. It's not a cash economy. When it's a cash economy, also what it means, and they can also go, let's say, to MasterCard or let's say to Visa and take this data and say who are the people making the money or making the transactions. So it's much more easier.
It can be easily tracked.
But it also means that they have to invest in the resources, because if they don't invest in the resources to be able to critically analyze that data, it means it's also challenging for them. So I do believe that over time, once technology improves and more and more people use their cards, or let's say they digitize their businesses, and the tax administrations are able to invest in resources, it means that they'll be able to get more tax revenue.
I think I like the analysis, because for me, having the resources is one, but the investment is key. And for Sierra Leone, we know that our economy is not that strong to bring in some of those facilities. But like you said, we still have a long way to go, in as much as we're not doing bad and we're not doing too good. Anyways, so what has life been as an entrepreneur?
It's way different, because obviously it's more of a hustle. It's not having a cushy job, and sometimes, I didn't say I'm one of those people, but you have some people in some jobs that just like basically relax and can't get the salary every month. But it's also, it means that if you want to become an entrepreneur, it means that you have to prepare yourself for that role. So I guess in me being an entrepreneur now is different from other people being an entrepreneur. So as a young entrepreneur, obviously, as I said, although I was working officially, but I also had different businesses, it means that I made a lot of mistakes along the way. It meant that I made a lot of bad decisions along the way and learned from them. You remember I was telling you earlier about actually learning from a mistake. It means that you have to work very, very hard. It means that, for example, if you have, let's say, a transportation business, you always have to be maybe in the garage supervising that they fix the car, or when the car breaks down, the lorry
you must be there at all times.
You must be there, you have to be present. So moving from that, in terms of being a young entrepreneur and actually doing all those things, it means that now I guess the stakes are higher, because obviously you're more of a professional. You have to it means that, as I said, one of the value propositions we're trying to bring for our business at the Betts Farm, it means that we want to, our clients' management services has to be top class,
top notch,
not what people would generally expect from Sierra Leonean businesses, because obviously we do have some international clients. So there was international clients I was talking to recently, and I said, look, it's not only the fact that we want to provide these services or provide good services to you, but also we want to welcome you into our country.
Right.
Because I guess setting that good impression on people
goes a long way.
That goes a long way. And
right.
maybe you're the first person they've actually spoken to. So if you can actually create that value for them, in them knowing that they will be okay
right.
in actually dealing with Sierra Leonean businesses, it means that if they want to expand their businesses, they have a good taste, and which it can actually pass on to
they
others.
have a business they can rely on with credible data.
Exactly. But I think generally speaking, I would say being an entrepreneur, it means that you have to work very hard. You have to pick yourself up when things are tough. So you have to always learn also, and it means that you need people that you need to build a really, really good team.
Right.
I could see interestingly that you do have a young team here with you doing this interview, which is really good, because it means that when you build, you can't do everything. So it means that you're able to delegate, which is very, very important. And there's sometimes that you actually, even if you think they're going to go into the deep end of the sea, you just leave them so they learn from it, and you come and show them. So it means that when you're not there, because I think what is important is that you have to find a way wherein even if you're not there, things still function.
Right.
You know what I mean? It doesn't matter whether my name is on the letterhead. You need to build that team around you that actually, or even some people
whatever
that
is happening, things must happen.
Exactly, because for example, I just made a hire earlier this year. Somebody's a chartered accountant. She's way better than me when it comes to accounting.
Wow.
Way better than me.
You just give the instructions.
Yeah, no, to be honest, I'm 16 years or so a chartered accountant. She's maybe 4 or 5 years, but she's way better than me because obviously she concentrated on the accounting side. So these are things that you have to accept and know how to actually manage them to ensure that your business goes.
Wow, I think I like the way you analyze about you being an entrepreneur, because having a team is much more important for your success.
Yes.
You know. So let's now, since we're coming to the end of the interview, what advice do you have for young professionals who would want to be in the field of accounting, who would want to be tax experts? So what advice do you have for young Sierra Leoneans viewing this program, or Africans as a whole?
Well, I think it's not only for accountants or people that want to do tax. Generally speaking, for all professionals, I think I realized, so very, very early on in my career, like 2 years into my job or 2 years after college, I was a chartered accountant, and I only did my master's, I think maybe 6, 7, 8 years later.
Right.
Because I didn't see the need. You know what I mean? I was in a job, I was progressing and things like that. But one thing I didn't do for a long time, about let's say 8 years, 9 years, was advancing my skills. And when I say advancing my skills, generally speaking, in terms of, let's say, presentation skills, or let's say Excel skills, or let's say doing something online, research skills, you know what I mean? So it was just for a long time, I think, you usually say, what do you tell maybe your 20-something-year-old self? I'll tell people that are young professionals coming up, build the skills that are relevant for your job. So now, for example, at the Betts Farm, anybody that comes in, even if you just finished college, man, you're going to start doing things online or through Freetown Business School, for example, which is one of the things I also co-own. You need to start doing courses to actually improve yourself, to make yourself better. So, for example, in the accountancy field, everybody should be really, really good at Excel. You know what I mean? It's not only to just add things there, you should be able to analyze things and things like that. So building your skills relevant to your job is very, very critical, because that is what will make you different. But also, I think the other thing also is being very, very humble, accepting that you can be the best in everything. It doesn't mean that if you're a chartered accountant, you should be walking as if you're walking on water. It also means that you need to work very, very, very hard for everything you have. nothing comes easy. I think we do have my generation, maybe the younger generation, thinks that maybe sometimes things should come easy. No, it doesn't mean that when you're seeing somebody being successful,
driving a car, you feel they got it so easily.
Exactly. No, people don't get things easy. Well, some people do, but you know what I mean. The people that are genuine and have integrity don't. So it means that you also want to be that person who is an example.
Right.
So it means that you really need to work very, very hard. So I think those are the general advice I'll give in terms of expertise, humbleness, hard work. Having integrity means that also integrity, apart from the financial integrity, when you say you're doing something on time, you do it on time. If you can't do it on time, it means that you have to tell people that your clients
becomes a problem.
Dependability, that okay, I can't do it on time, this is the reason, just give me maybe a day. Act professional in that sense. So I think these are really key things in terms of actually being professional, but also being a good person and a good citizen.
Okay, so finally, before we leave you, Mr. Alfred Akibo Betts, one of the opportunities that this platform creates is to be able to network young professionals, and some of you who have actually gone through the field and are now progressing from one level to another. Are you open to mentorship if we contact you to mentor one or two, just to mentor young professionals who want to be in the field of tax experts or accountants?
Yes, I'm very open to that. Actually, I've done different mentorship programs. I mentor people that just contact me that they want me to mentor them. I speak to them all the time. I find time. Interestingly, when people send message to me on LinkedIn and I send my number back to them and call them and they come to my office, they're surprised that, oh, you know, you accepted that, because you need to, I will not say inspire, because I don't want to put my head up like I'm the greatest guy, but just try as best as possible to encourage people that they know that you can have that kind of conversation and also advise them. Also, I do mentor people through Mentor X, which is an African platform. Locally and also internationally. I remember I've had people from Nigeria and also from other countries that I mentioned. So I'm very, very open to that. I usually say that it's also two-way street, meaning that, so it's interesting that sometimes some people think that because you're a professional for a long period of time, the people that your mentee also will not inspire you. You know what I mean? There's some things that some people that are much younger have done that you haven't done. So it means that it gets you thinking of what next you could do. So I think that is very, very important. So I'm very, very open to it, and I'll be really happy and grateful if you give me that opportunity, because I also think it's an opportunity for me to work and share with young people.
Okay, so you've heard from the taxman, the entrepreneur, the accountant. He's also open to mentorship, and we want to thank you so much for being part of the show today. It's been an honor hosting you. We know it's so much busy, it's a weekend now, but we want to say that we're proud of you, and whatever time that the needs arise, we'll call on you to share your word of encouragement, advice, professional advice to our viewers. So viewers, this is where we draw down the curtain for today's edition of Meet Professionals with me, KEBE. Today we've been holding a very fruitful and a very exciting and insightful conversation with the taxman, the entrepreneur, and the accountant, Mr. Alfred Akibo Betts. Till we meet again next time, I want to say thank you, and please don't forget to subscribe.